Hello and welcome. I'm Kenzie.
And I'm Carli, and this is Ask a Therapist.
Each week, we explore life's most relatable questions, from relationships and boundaries to burnout and self-worth, all through a therapist's lens.
We're licensed therapists, but this isn't therapy. It's a place for insight, reflection, and a little humor along the way.
Your questions,
our insights.
Ask a Therapist. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. The content shared should not be considered a substitute for professional mental health care, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly encourage listeners to seek help from a licensed mental health professional for any personal or psychological concerns.
Any advice or commentary offered is based solely on the information provided. As such, we cannot guarantee any specific outcomes, and the feedback given should not be interpreted as professional mental health advice. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call 911, 988, or 211.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. We have an excellent question this week. I am really looking forward to getting into it. But we're going to start with another just kind of fun opener question. And this is a listener submitted question. And they asked, what is your best recent purchase?
Yeah, so I get to actually show my best recent. Well, technically I have two, but one I get to show, which is my new glasses. I really like my new glasses that I'm wearing today. I just got them. They're
I love
Warby
them.
Parker. This is not an ad, unless Warby Parker wants to sponsor us, and then it's a different conversation. But I do very much like their glasses, like just the style and everything, and being able to pick what you need. So I'm liking my new glasses. And I am also really, really liking a new scent that I've found. It's a Kendra Scott scent, which don't necessarily go to Kendra Scott for perfume. But they have I'm going to be honest, I'm not gatekeeping here, because usually I would not share because I don't want everybody to smell like me. But I think it's a really good one. I like it. It's called Amber Aura, I think is the name of it. But It is usually amber scents are very heavy and kind of musky to me. This one is very light and clean, and I'm loving it for the fall. So that's my new favorite scent.
Well, thank you for not gatekeeping. I'm gonna have to work that out, because I love there's something about a new scent that's just kind of it just is something new and exciting. Which I love. And also your glasses are so cute. I'm obsessed with them. So excellent purchase. This is such a good one.
What about you?
I've got a little bit of a story to mine. So I hope that I don't ramble too much with this. But when I was in grad school for counseling, I babysat for a family that had the best air freshener I've ever smelled in my life. I was obsessed with it, and I wanted it so badly, but it was $100. And I was like, there is no world in which I'm going to spend $100 on an air freshener. And so I was always just kind of all right, I'm never going to get it. But I was in grad school at that point. I had read something about writing goals for yourself, and if you achieve those goals, then having something that you're working towards or something that you can get excited about. And so I kid you not, I don't even know how many years, but 8 years, I was okay, as soon as I start my private practice, when I see my first client at my private practice, I am buying this air freshener. And so I have been waiting for this moment for so long now. I finally bought it. It still smells wonderful. I love it. It's Joe Malone Pomegranate Noir air wick air freshener that I now in the bathroom. But I think it's really more it still smells great. I love it, but I think it's really more just kind of that having something that you've been waiting for and working for so long. And I also just think it's fun. I think that's a fun thing for anybody to do in their life. If there's a goal that you really want to achieve, kind of having something to look forward to when you do achieve it. So
yeah, I like that. It represents more than just the scent. Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I love that we both chose scents, especially in the fall. There's something there are certain scents that you associate with fall and all of that. So yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, should we get to our question? We have a good one today, so.
I'm ready. Yes.
For today's question, we've got a relationship related question, which is
Okay.
very much my jam. Like, I love these
Yep.
types of topics.
Yep.
So I'm excited to dig into it.
Hmm.
But this particular listener provided a little more context and like background information. And just so you're aware, when you like write in, we're going to ask for some identifying information. It's up to you how much of that you want to share. But I do find that it is very helpful in us like actually providing like relevant responses when we have this information. So I'm excited to dig into it because we have a little bit more of that background. That being said, the question, how can you maintain joy and emotional well-being in a marriage where you feel a deep lack of companionship, affection, excitement, and connection? My husband and I have sought help from multiple therapists, both within the church and outside of it. We were still struggling, and over time the emotional distance seems to grow. How do you navigate and heal from this kind of loneliness when your spouse seems uninterested in working on the relationship and you've reached the point of silence while carrying pain in your heart? Kenzie, what do you think about this?
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts. And so if it's okay with you, Carly, I'm just gonna like run with it for a second because there is so much that comes up with this question. I think the first thing to note is that I had such a present emotional response when I first read this question, just because I hear a lot of pain and grief in it. And to me, under the surface, I think really what I was hearing was just this feeling of a loss of hope and a sense of defeat in the relationship. And if that's a constant in your life, in your relationship, in your environment, that's really heavy to hold. That's a really hard experience to go through. And so yeah, definitely a very present. I really felt for this person when I read this question. Something that stood out to me. So you're um pointing out of this person being a Christ follower, that was something that stood out to me was their reference to having therapy both within and without the church and how their faith might be playing a role in how, there are so many aspects to faith and how you see yourself and how you see the world, how you see relationships, how that might be coming to play. It's such a protective factor for so many people,
Yeah.
which is, you know, incredible and important. And it impacts how a lot of people see relationships and marriage and what comes up for them. And so that was something that came up for me of if we were in session together, like exploring that, seeing what came up, and really utilizing their faith in sessions to help set the context for things. And I'm sure we can explore that a little bit more later. But something else that I wanted to point out, and Carly, I don't know if you noticed this or not, the wording of the question really stood out to me because
Okay.
the question wasn't, how do I end the relationship and move on from it? It
Mm-hmm.
was, how can I heal from this experience of loneliness while maintaining joy and emotional well-being in the marriage?
Yep.
And so, while also noting that their spouse seems uninterested in working on the marriage. And something that I think that people might not necessarily know about our role as therapists is it is our job to meet clients where they're at. And so I
Yep.
think that it could be easy for people that are listening to this to kind of say like, okay, you are going through something really, really difficult, emotionally heavy. You've tried counseling, your husband isn't trying anymore, and the relationship. And it's a natural response, I think, because we're conditioned to want things to be easy. We want to protect people. We don't want to see people that we love to not be happy. Um, but as this listener who submitted this question probably knows, like there is no simple solution here. This is really emotionally charged. There is no simple answer. And so as therapists, it's our job to kind of hear what clients are saying, meet them where they're at. And even if we want to protect them, we also have to help them navigate where they are and what's coming up for them.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that up because I can absolutely see people like, oh, done with it. Just end it. And, some of that is a more more modern like ideas around marriage and what it's supposed to be. Like even just this idea that like marriage is supposed to be a source of happiness. Not
Right.
everyone feels that way. Not everyone believes that. Not everyone operates based on that principle. There are many, many different reasons that people might decide to become married or stay in a relationship or, be in a relationship.
Sure.
And not every relationship serves the same purpose. So I'm with you on it's easy to kind of say, like, oh, well, it just sounds like the marriage is the problem, just end the marriage. But what happens when you maybe don't want to end the marriage or you're not necessarily seeing you don't necessarily have that same idea about marriage is supposed to like feel good. Like realistically, sometimes it doesn't. And if you run at every sign of that, you're probably going to find yourself ending a lot of relationships. And so I appreciate you framing it that way because while that may be a piece of what we ultimately end up getting to, the
Right.
person has to get there on their own in deciding
Right.
that that's even an option for them.
Yes.
We can't necessarily say to them, well, you should just, leave. It's really not that simple for a lot of people.
Right.
So, yeah.
And can be super invalidating if you
Yeah.
know, go to a therapist and you say, "This is what I'm experiencing. This is what's coming up for me," and they're like, "All right, well, I think you know that this relationship is done, is over." I would feel so just not seen, not heard, not validated in any way, shape, or form. And it's, again, oftentimes a lot more complicated and emotionally charged than that.
100%. Because I mean, just a little piece. They did
Yeah.
not say how long they've been married, but they have three children. So,
Yeah.
and I am not a person who's like, you need to stay for the kids, but obviously making a decision to end the marriage has implications beyond just the two of you at this point, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that is very like oftentimes situations are more complicated than just a simple like, oh, okay, easy. Yeah, not
Right.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious what your initial thoughts of this question were. What came up for you?
Yeah, one of my first thoughts, and I think this is my therapist brain, I always think of questions first before
Yeah.
responses because I always find myself wanting a little bit more context. And in fairness, they provided a lot of helpful context.
Yeah.
Um, but my first thought was, when did this begin? Is this new? Was this like a slow burn over years? Was there some sort of event that maybe you had a hard time recovering from and it's like never been the same since? Or have you never really felt a sense of connection and closeness with this person? And you're just now starting to like question your ability to cope with that, right? So I think that to me would really tell a lot because then I'm trying to understand, are we trying to get back to something that you feel like you lost? Or are we trying to create something new that you feel you never had? Does that
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think to your point of like questions that come up, I'm also super curious about their experience of therapy in the past. Like if they've gone to
Yeah.
multiple people, what have they talked about? What have they worked on? Part of this question is it feels like the listeners kind of saying, I feel like maybe I'm working for both of us here. I'm
Yeah.
carrying this. It doesn't feel like my spouse is interested in working on the relationship. I'm carrying this pain in my heart. And so what has the work for both of them looked like? Are their experiences of the relationship different? How would they explain, their experiences of the relationship to each other?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I don't know if I said this, but this person did identify as female. So we
Yeah.
are talking about a male female marriage,
Yeah.
heterosexual relationship, just so we're aware.
Thank you.
Um, Another thing that came to mind was the framing of my spouse seems uninterested, but we've seen several like professionals about this. That
Sure.
I was very curious about that. Like, are you dragging your spouse to therapy? Because I do find that like couples work is so much harder when one person is only there because like there's an ultimatum, but they're not really interested in changing anything. They're not really looking for any sort of feedback. They maybe just want to kind of like make their case. And
Mhm.
they try to turn you or me as the therapist into the judge who's going to like say, you're right and you're wrong. And that's not what couples therapy is. So, but the fact that they've tried multiple therapists, they've talked to people within the church, something in that seems a little incongruent. Like, why is the spouse so willing to keep going to see these professionals if they're not interested in changing anything? Right.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
to your point, it makes me
sure.
very curious about like just the framing that both of them are even looking at therapy. Is this just like a checked box?
Sure.
Is this something like, have they ever found anything helpful? I would be very curious about input from the other therapists, like how they've conceptualized this couple's particular challenges, and if maybe some of that is coming out in the language and the way that this person is even describing their situation. Like, have
Sure.
they decided that this is the challenge because that's what therapists have kind of
Sure.
framed for them is the
Yeah.
challenge?
Yeah.
So that was just something I was very curious about like uninterested, but most people who are completely uninterested are not going to go to therapy, or they're certainly not going to try multiple therapists, you know?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, Carly, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist. You work with couples.
Yeah.
This is really kind of in your wheelhouse. So, when you have a couple that comes in where in this case the wife is feeling like I am really trying, this is really really hard for me. I'm feeling such an emotional toll of this relationship and I feel like my spouse is uninterested. How do you approach that in your sessions?
Yeah. I mean, one of the first questions I think in most therapy is going to be like, what brings you here? Right. But when I'm dealing with couples, I really want to get to goals maybe a little bit quicker than I do with individuals. And what I mean by that is like, I want to understand what both of you are hoping to leave with. I know I've said in a previous episode, like, you got to leave with something. And so I'm trying
Mhm.
to figure out, are you here for me to save your marriage? Are you here because you think you've got most of the pieces, but you just need them kind of reorganized? And are the two of you aligned even in your expectations of what couples therapy can do? I tell people, like, I have no magic fairy dust. I cannot make your partner do anything that you want them to do or stop them from doing anything. This is an opportunity for both of you to learn something about yourselves, learn about the relationship, and I hold the space for the relationship. So when I am asking questions, making suggestions, they are in service of the marriage. Like, what would it take for this marriage to thrive? Sometimes we find that that conflicts with whatever the person wants for themselves individually. And it's
Okay.
a challenging thing to deal with, but that's typically where I'm trying to start, because I want to know, are we even aiming at the same thing here? Are the expectations realistic? And what's the buy-in on both ends when it comes to doing something different? So I will often say, if you're hoping that what I'm going to say is like, you're right, you're wrong, you're going to be very disappointed. If you're hoping that I only tell your spouse the things that they can change and I offer no recommendations to you, you're going to be really disappointed. You're all you can do is change you. And so I'm constantly going to be challenging you to rethink your position, your contribution to the pattern, what you can change. And if you're up for that, then we can do some work here. So that's kind of like my opening frame. I know you're an LPC, but do you see couples? And if so, how would you approach this?
I do not currently see couples.
Okay.
But to that point of the individual work, I have a lot of individuals that come to counseling and will talk about their spouse,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And one of my favorite lines is, I am not their therapist. I am yours. I know that this probably feels unfair that we're working on your change and what you have to address, but you you can't control anybody else. And so I think, even within if somebody's going to couples counseling and all of a sudden they're having to come face to face with, oh, maybe I am also a part of what might not be working in the relationship, and then
Hmm.
they seek individual therapy. I think that it can be hard, but I think that it's so important to have that experience of, well, what ways am I playing into this dynamic too? And taking accountability for that, being willing to address it, being willing to change. I think that's a lot of times what does happen in relationships is we get so caught in our own view of the relationship and
Yeah.
seeing how we're trying and noticing how the other person isn't trying, but they might be having the exact same kind of experience just through their own view as well. And so it can be pretty jarring to have to challenge that, but both parties needing to be willing to change to make a relationship work.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Wanting your partner to change and feeling really justified in what you're doing is a common theme. And I can't tell you the number of times that I have said, it sounds like you're both saying the same thing. Like, it sounds like you're
Yeah,
both having the same experience. It's just
sure.
you're on different sides of it. And so you're very aware of your experience, but is there room to consider the possibility that your partner's having the same experience on the other side of this?
Sure.
So I'm excited to dig in a little more because I feel like I'm going to come from the couple's perspective and you
Yeah.
might take a little bit more of the individual perspective.
Yes.
So yeah, do you have more thoughts or what?
Yes. I actually think it's funny that you noted like I'm coming from the couple's perspective and or that you were coming from the couple's perspective and I'm coming from the individual perspective, because I actually highlighted part of the question where they said, how can I maintain joy and emotional well-being? And they said, how can I maintain joy and emotional well-being in a marriage? But I switched it a little bit, and this is probably from my individual perspective. So first of all, I just want to normalize that it is really incredibly painful to feel alone in a marriage. And that joy and emotional well-being is probably going to look pretty different for them right now than maybe it has in the past. And I think that your question of when did this start is a really good one. But something that I would love to be able to tell this person is, it sounds like they're really carrying the weight of the relationship super heavily in their heart. And so something that I would encourage that they do is seek individual therapy so that they can process through the grief that they're experiencing, and the difficulty in this chapter of their life. But then to that point of how can I maintain joy and emotional well-being, trying to find something for them. Like, it sounds like so much of what they're focusing on right now is the relationship and wanting to fix that and wanting to feel differently in that. But I wonder if they're able to find an outlet just for themselves. So taking, like an hour a week to have something that they look forward to, that makes them smile, laugh, gives them a sense of purpose, like something that fills their cup, if that could be helpful in just having a different outlook on this chapter of life that they're in. So to relieve some of the pain that they're feeling if they have something for themselves. And then my just kind of third point on that is like, if they have people that they can turn to for support outside of their marriage, if they have really good friends, family, to turn to them, to lean on them, to feel like you're getting some of that support and emotional validation in other areas of your life so that you don't just feel so alone. Because I think it's easy to feel alone in a marriage where you feel like you're not being supported. And so to find that outlet in other areas as well.
Yeah, well, part of what I like about that is a concept that I talk to couples about a lot, which is that you are responsible for your own happiness. You're responsible for meeting your own needs. You're responsible for knowing what your needs are and
Yeah.
meeting them and creating your own sense of contentment and happiness. Now, when I say that, obviously, if you are in a relationship that is causing you a lot of distress or pain, or, that is going to impact your happiness and your sense of contentment.
Yeah.
But sometimes we want to place the responsibility on the marriage or on our spouse to be the source of that support all the time, or that the source
Sure.
of connection and friendship and companionship. And the reality is that no one person can meet all of your needs. Like, it's
Yeah.
just not realistic.
Yeah.
And so, to what you're saying, if you have other sources of companionship, other sources of connection, other sources of excitement,
Uh-huh.
it's okay to find happiness outside of just the relationship. Obviously, I say that full well knowing that, like, I'm not encouraging people to seek to step outside of their marriage or relationship and not
Yeah.
be honest about it. But,
Yeah.
this person doesn't necessarily have to be your end all be all. If you find other sources of happiness and support that help to kind of buoy you, especially in areas where maybe the relationship is a little weak, that
Yeah.
can actually help a relationship to thrive much longer than it would if,
Right.
everything has to come in this one person.
Yeah.
You're going to be hard pressed to find one person that meets all of your relational needs. It's
Yeah.
just not really realistic.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also thinking too about if you're able to find those outlets in other areas, it also can help just increase sense of self, sense of confidence. Like that can definitely take a hit if you're in a relationship where you just feel like, this is just draining me. And so to find that outlet in another area can also just help you even advocate for yourself more in the relationship or to feel a little bit more buoyed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, we want our relationship to be a source of support, right? Maybe not the only one, but like why are you there if there's,
Yeah.
nothing being offered there? So one of the things that stands out to me from the couple's perspective was this mention of I've reached a point of silence. And
Hmm.
it makes me think about, I tend to work a lot from the Gottman's perspective and also from emotionally focused therapy. And part of what the Gottmans would suggest is that conflict within a relationship is normal. It's actually more dangerous when you stop having conflict, meaning like when you stop talking about the problem, you almost give up to where you started. Like maybe you've lost a sense of hope that this can get better. And so
Yeah.
that really stood out to me as a red flag, the
Uh-huh.
silence while carrying the pain internally is typically not sustainable long term.
Yeah.
And one of the signs that you are headed for a split in the relationship is when distance is just created because you feel like you can't fix it. You stop arguing about it. You just back up. And then there's like this gap that tends to widen further and further the less that you address it. So, one of the things that I would say to this listener is you are in a bit of a danger zone. Like, I want to be honest about that, just in terms of what the research would suggest that means about the relationship. Yeah, another Gottman's concept is that there are solvable problems and there are perpetual problems.
Hmm.
And the Gottmans I'm talking about the Gottmans. They are a respected couple in marriage and family therapy. They've done a ton of research, like observing couples, filming couples, doing therapy with couples, and probably the largest like research base that we have right now in the US about relationship statistics as it relates to relationships. So that's where I'm pulling from.
Hmm.
But they would say, and this is a married couple, they would say that the majority of problems in relationships are perpetual. They are not solvable. And when I say majority, they say 69%. And some people hear that and they're like, oh, we're screwed. Like there's no hope. But I mean, it is very normal. If you think about it, if you've ever been in a long-term relationship, typically you argue about the same thing over
Uh-huh.
and over and over again. It has a different face, it's a different scenario, different circumstance, different trigger, but at the root of it, it's, the same core problems that you don't exactly see eye to eye on.
Sure.
So identifying like a solvable problem from a perpetual problem has to do with essentially how much weight it carries and
Okay.
how pervasive it is throughout the marriage. So
Yeah.
is it something that can easily be solved through compromise? You know, I like the temperature at 65. My partner likes it at 75. Okay, we can meet at the middle at 70. Like, whew, we figured that out. Or,
Yeah.
we're going through a rough transition. We're in the middle of a move or a job change, and my partner's really stressed, and I'm not liking the way that we're connecting. Okay, it's somewhat circumstantial. It's tied to a situation that won't
Sure.
be the situation forever.
Sure.
Those things are more solvable.
Yeah.
Perpetual problems are those problems where we're just different people in some areas and we're gonna butt heads on this sometimes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That can be something like not being in agreement about how many children you want to have, or maybe you practice different religions, or maybe you hold different values about a particular topic that's really important to you. These types of problems, there's no easy fix. Like they are
Yeah.
going to permeate throughout the life of the marriage. And so what the Gottmans would suggest is you're not going to be able to solve it. There's never going to be a point where you're like, this is not a problem. We found the compromise. It's gone. The best
Mhm.
thing you can do is learn to manage it. And you try to manage it in a way where it doesn't tank the relationship. So basically, you find ways to be able to navigate this difference where you don't put it in the middle of the two of you. You figure out how to tackle it together. You kind of link arms and you're like, I know we don't see eye to eye here. So we might have to put in place some strategies to help us navigate this difference. And I know I'm being long-winded right now, but to me, this sounds like a perpetual problem. It
Yeah.
sounds like if you have one spouse who's somewhat uninterested in change and another spouse who really has a deep desire and expectation for this intimacy, this closeness, this connection, then you are going to find that this continues to come up. So my first thought is don't expect it to go away. We just got to figure out how to manage it, especially if you've decided that you don't want to end the marriage, then we've got to
Mhm.
find better ways to manage it.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, I actually would love for you to keep going because this is so good. This is so good and so helpful. I appreciate the insight, the education. I think that so many people are going to hear this and it's going to make sense. Like, I just think that that's such a good framework to come from. And, that idea of if this is a perpetual problem, if they've decided that they want to stay in the relationship, again, some of that individual work then comes in acceptance, in reframing, in seeing like, okay, how I expect that love and connection is going to be different from how they show it, and can I try to see the ways that they are showing me that they love and care about me in their own way and value that as much as I maybe value the things that I feel that they aren't doing.
Acceptance, I mean, I think is key. And that doesn't, acceptance is a little bit different than tolerance. Like some things we can
Yep.
tolerate and other things we learn to accept.
Yeah.
I think acceptance becomes a lot easier when you're able to assume positive regard and not assign
Yeah.
negative intent to your
Yes.
partner. So
Yeah.
if there's a way to understand their behavior as just a difference and not necessarily a character flaw, you're going to have
Yeah.
an easier time finding acceptance with this particular difference or this area where you don't see eye to eye.
Yeah.
Even things like learning how to talk about it. Like, I mean, the Gottmans, they give a lot of tools. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them, but figuring out ways to have a soft startup. Like, how are you going into these conversations? Because that shapes a lot about how it goes. Like, the Gottmans would say they can listen to the first few minutes of a conversation and know like where it's headed. So like thinking about how you're approaching the discussion, how much of this can I accept? Can I assume positive regard on my partner's part? All of that is going to help you in how you respond and again manage this perpetual problem.
Yeah. Um, what advice do you have for this listener? Just kind of, there you've had so many good insights into this and just in relationships in general. What would be some closing thoughts or advice that you have?
Yeah, I think again, coming from the Gottmans, they
Uh-huh.
would suggest that the research shows that it's important to have a shared sense of meaning in relationships that last and thrive. Um, and so that can be in the form of like traditions or rituals. It can be, for some people, it's tied to their faith and their belief of like what the marriage represents and why they feel maybe pulled or called to be a part of it. But you need a why that you're doing this because, otherwise you just kind of run out of steam.
Yeah.
And in that shared sense of meaning, they talk about the need to be able to pursue dreams. And if you perceive your marriage as being in the way of pursuing your dream, then you are probably headed for some sort of like a split or, irreconcilable difference. And so part of what I'm thinking, and this kind of goes back to what you're saying about finding that individual happiness, is there a way for you to live your dream within this marriage? Like is that possible?
Sure.
And part of what they talk about is you don't necessarily have to agree with or share the same dream as a partner, but you can't get in the way of it. if you get in the way of it, then you are putting yourself, that now we're in that conversation of like, are my needs in conflict with the marriage? And so if there is a way for this person to still accomplish that sense of connection and closeness and essentially live that dream that they have within the marriage, then it might be manageable.
Yeah.
If not, or if the other person is not just uninterested, but like actually in the way of that dream, like, I'm not changing this, I don't care about this, it's not important to me, you need to just get over it,
Sure.
you are likely headed for a point where you just can't tolerate it anymore. And I say that knowing that that's a very modern and like kind of US perspective of like, people need to
Sure.
be able to live their dreams. That is not necessarily the reason that everyone marries, but because of the messaging and so much, we're like inundated with messages around that in this culture. And I mean, it's a very individualistic culture, and like pursue your
Sure.
own happiness and all of that. It becomes really, really hard to, maintain a marriage if you feel like you're not getting that in this, under this frame of like life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. So I think if those
Sure.
are values that are important to you, we've got to find a way for you to be able to like live your dream within this marriage, or at least pursue it.
Yep. Yeah.
What do
I
you
love
think?
it.
What are your thoughts?
No, I absolutely love that. I think that just through hearing your perspective too, Carly, one, I would say, yeah, make sure that you're also make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you are meeting kind of your emotional needs that maybe aren't being met right now in the marriage. And make sure that you have some support. But after hearing what you had to say too, I think that it could be super helpful for this listener to do some research, the Gottman theory, the couple, like kind of what some of their understandings are. And so that they can look at that and kind of say, oh, this is what I've been experiencing. This is what's coming up for me. And almost just have a better understanding of themselves.
Yeah, well, when you said maybe they could like do some of their own research,
Yes.
I just thought one of the Gottman books that I tend to recommend a lot and pull
Yeah.
from is The Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work. And
Yeah.
it covers a lot of what I just described in detail. And there are like little tests and quizzes that you can do to kind of see where you
Yeah.
fall and how to distinguish your perpetual problems from your solvable ones. And they
Yeah.
even go through some examples of like how to manage some very common perpetual problems. So it could be a good resource for this person to consider. And if you could get your uninterested spouse to even read it with you, like, even better.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I think that's such a good resource for anybody who's listening to this and feeling connected to this question.
Fair enough. I also just want to encourage them to hang in there. Like, going
Yeah.
to therapy is not easy. Like,
Yeah.
trying multiple sources of support is not easy. And so just their commitment to keep trying, I'm like, that says a lot
Yeah.
just in and of itself. And so part of me, I think, just wants to encourage them, like anything that you continue to pursue to, improve or to get better, like that's not in vain. And so to,
Right.
keep
Right.
trying to not give up on the idea that I can find a way to, find my happiness within this. So
Yeah. Yeah,
we were a
absolutely.
little long today. I'm passionate about this topic, so I probably could go on for another 30 minutes about this, but
I think we need another episode around something similar just because I think that everything that you had to say was just so helpful and so, provided so much awareness and education, even for me. So I loved it.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, I'm saying all this. I don't always do this perfectly, believe it or not. So, still a work in progress over here, but yeah, happy to share the resource. Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for this question, and for allowing us both to kind of have these conversations and to put this out there. So we are looking forward to our next episode and what comes up. We've got the holidays coming up, so I think that we're going to take a little bit of a holiday spin in our next episode. We are
Yes.
looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yes. Holiday questions. So many family dynamic things and whatnot. So we'll get into some of that.
All right, we'll see you all next time.
All right. See ya.